Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the northeastern corner of South Africa, the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, the western fringes of the Kruger National Park, the Sabi Sands, and on the western fringes of that, Djuma Private Game Reserve, where we're sitting at a hyena den, which is, well, semi-active, I suppose you could call it. That is a living hyena, a mother of a tiny little baby, about 2 weeks old, probably sitting inside the little hole there, and there's a 6-month-old the other side, there's a 7-week-old in another hole, and there are a few more hyenas that have kind of been around here now that disappeared. It's a beautiful dawn here in the northeastern corner of South Africa. My name is James Henry. On camera we have Tebs. Tebs, give us a thumb there. That's Tebs' thumb. And in the final control we have Nikki and Louise, and on the other vehicle the inimitable and irascible Brent Leo Smith, being filmed by Wiem Durenbrach. You are on a live safari. If you've stumbled across this website, that means that we love to hear from you. Hashtag Safari Live if you want to tweet us, or questions at wildearth.tv if you'd like to talk to us on the email. Live sunrise safari here from the midst of the African wild. So enjoy it. For the next 3 hours you will be with us. We're going to spend a little bit of time at this hyena den and just see what's happening here. Quite interestingly, it looked to me like the two females that we came across earlier had eaten last night. One of them actually also looked pregnant. It could be that we're going to have 4 generations of little ones here fairly soon. But the mother of the 7-week-old, which has sort of disappeared down into the hole at the top of the den, was looking very fat indeed. So I think they probably went out foraging and pilfered something. Here comes the little cub. Here comes the 3-week-old cub. Look, there she is. Very sweet. Just a little bit nervous. Definitely be worth just sitting here to see if she doesn't come out. I find it interesting sometimes they're not nervous. Sometimes they're completely sort of relaxed about it. And sometimes they're a bit nervous. So if there's an upheaval during the night, a bit of fighting, maybe they wake up and they're a bit nervous in the mornings. But we'll just sit here very patiently. There we go. Hello, little fella. Now, just for those of you who perhaps just joined us, and it's been so wonderful to interact with our new viewers as well as the regulars of late. This, I think, relatively high-ranking female here had twins that she had at another den. I think there's only one left. The only reason I say I think is that somebody took a screenshot, Inga took a screenshot of two single cubs that we had at this den that seemed to have different faces. We saw them at different times. It's possible that the twins are still alive. I think it was possibly just the angle and the lighting, though, that made the two pictures look so different. So I think we've only got one of these little ones left. And just to quickly reiterate, the den contains 3 generations. There's a 6-month-old cub who's just over the back of the den there. There's a 7-week-old cub who's in the hole at to the right-hand side of your screen. You can't actually see it at the moment. And the cub's inside. Her mother wandered off as we got here today with a big fat belly. And then the latest generation is this little 2 to 3 week old cub here with her mother, who has been variously named the manky mum or the plain one, simply because if you take a good look at her, she's got very little hair on her face, and she's got a big chunk taken out of her left ear. There you go. Hello. Looked up on cue. And hello, Jenny M. While you I think you're a regular viewer. Your daughter Sierra is watching with you tonight, and so you're most welcome. I hope you enjoy this magnificent sunrise with us. And I'm just going to ask Tebs to pan across to where the sun is starting to pop up, a bit like that hyena cub. Look at that. There it comes. And on cue, the little baby is coming out. Now, brilliant query from Melissa in Los Angeles, and I hadn't thought about this. Melissa, you want to know if anyone's seen hyena mating? I'm sure people have. I haven't seen it. I can't remember actually ever seeing it. So it probably happens in the dead of the night. I think it's I don't think it's a prolonged affair. It's certainly nothing like the prolonged affair that it is with the big cats. And the males, of course, are so dominated that I think the mating probably takes, but it's also pretty awkward given the equipment that they have. I think it's probably a fairly fast process that isn't repeated too often, and I'm sure the males probably disappear quickly after they've mated. Thanks, Melissa. And Kevin and Ravi, thank you very much for your updates regarding the lions roaring yesterday evening at the Djuma Dam Cam. Apparently you heard lions roaring. I know that the Birmingham boys went from Cheetah Plains, where they had 3 buffaloes to eat on. They decided they'd had enough meat there, and they wandered off into Mala Mala. It's possible that these hyenas went that far to eat those buffalo. Maybe that's why they're looking so full-bellied. I think they'd be right on the edge of their clan territory there, but it's entirely possible that that's what they did. So thanks, Kevin and Ravi, for that. And then also, lovely update from Chris Rogue, who said she saw a leopard at 1:20 yesterday morning at the Djuma Dam Camp, and growling, sawing away, giving his territorial call. And Brent is going to be following up around there to see if he can find the tracks of where that, I think it was a male, went. Probably Tingana. I know that he was around Cheetah Plains heading west yesterday evening. So we're going to sit here for a little bit longer and see if the cub doesn't come out. If she doesn't, we'll press on and help Brent try and find that leopard. We'll also go and have a look at quarantine. Here comes another hyena here. Here we go. Come from the side. I saw her. No, I didn't see her here earlier this morning. She definitely wasn't here when we got here. Let's just watch what happens. No acknowledgement from, I think, this very high-ranking female with a scaffy ear, aka Manky Mum. I just wonder if there wasn't some form of upheaval here last night, and that's why the cubs are a bit nervous. The 7-week-old was nervous when we arrived. She popped her head out quickly and then popped it back in again, and it's a real departure from how she was a few weeks ago when she was coming out and, you know, almost playing right next to the vehicle. Here comes the little one again. Just seems to be a bit reticent to come out. Very good question from Mike or Mick on YouTube. You want to know if the high-ranking female here was the one involved, or the high-ranking female involved in a fight that Scott saw the other day. You want to know if she was involved, and I don't know if she was involved at all. Oh, look, there's the 6-month-old cub. I suspect she may have been, but I don't know. There's a 6-month-old cub there. That is not the 6-month-old's mother. And what they're doing is they're smelling. There's a big puddle of urine over there. I'm just going to quickly look with my binoculars. The cub is sticking its head out again. Now, the mother of that 6-month-old is easily recognizable by an enormous scar across her back. And it's definitely not her. It's so fascinating. You know, we sit here and we watch these hyenas every day, just about, and they're always doing things we cannot understand or interpret. No idea what they were doing there. Now, just to reiterate, there was a large hyena fight a few days ago, and Christopher and Ginny, you want to know what's happened to that hyena. We don't know, I'm afraid. She's disappeared. I suspect probably, given that her foot was broken, she also had an ear ripped off. Without the ear, she'd survive. But with her foot broken, I don't think she'll survive long. So I suspect that she has probably crawled away somewhere and is probably no longer with us in the physical realm. So those two have just gone around the side there. I think it's definitely going to be worth spending a little bit of time here and just seeing what happens. We're learning so much by spending the time that we are here at this den. Now, it is a very beautiful morning. Like you can see the sun just popping up there. And Jose in Virginia, you want to know what the temperature is like? It's 19 degrees Celsius apparently, 68 degrees Fahrenheit. That feels about right. That's what the weather report says. It feels about right. Often the weather report is nothing more than a fairly poor approximation of what's going on with the weather. But this morning, 19 degrees feels about right. It's a really nice and cool. But that sun that you can see, which is a lovely gold color, is going to turn to a fairly burnished, pale yellow come about 8 o'clock. And the heat is going to build to a point that it becomes fairly difficult to tolerate out here. For the moment, it's magnificent. There you can hear a woodland kingfisher. Quintessential sound of the summertime here, as we head inexorably towards the summer solstice in a few days' time. There are lots of birds now starting to call as the sun pops up, a bit of a dawn chorus getting going now. Robins and boo-boos and doves, francolins, hornbills, sabota larks, all sorts of birds. So we're looking at the hole there, and in that hole is a little baby hyena, and ECB in Iowa, you want to know how deep the hole goes? Probably about 4 feet, and sometimes those holes sort of go all the way through the mound to other entrance holes, and I'm not sure if that's the case here, but certainly that's what they do at many of the other smaller mounds. So, up to 4 feet in there, ECB. Right, without further ado, let us head across to Brent Leo Smith. He can tell you what his plans for the morning are. I've no doubt if he's on leopard tracks, he'll be driving round at roughly 60 miles an hour with an extremely excited look on his face. You go and say good morning to him, and I'll sit here for a little bit longer.
And welcome to the Sunrise Safari. My name is Brent Leo Smith. I have a VM on camera with me, and we are heading towards the last position of quarantine. He's possibly still in the area. Here James is being nasty about my driving skills. You can just tell him it's because I can still see at his developed age. He has trouble staying on the road. So I'm just double checking here that he hasn't walked out of the area yet, and I haven't seen any tracks, so good so far. And it is an absolutely gorgeous morning out here in the Sabi Sands. We're on Juma Private Game Reserve this morning. There's a lovely little chill in the air, but I still think it's going to be a scorcher today. So we did get an update from the Juma Dam cam from Chris Rogue. There was a leopard sawing and drinking there at 1:20 a.m. My guess would be that it was Tingana who was moving towards this area last night. So we're going to check for quarantine first. If nothing here, we'll try to get onto those tracks. Scotty's out in tracking team, he's checking that area, so maybe he'll get some luck beforehand. Okay. I'm not 100% where the carcass was, but I'm quite sure I should see the off-roading tracks quite shortly. And I know he was down in the drainage side. Final control got an email from Kit in Pennsylvania looking for an ID on a juvenile bird at Pete's Pond in Botswana. I had a very brief look this morning, and if I had to hesitate a guess, it is a juvenile African jacana. I'll have a proper look on a bigger screen later, but it's either a juvenile jacana or a juvenile, one of the juvenile moorhens, or crakes, but I would definitely go juvenile jacana. If you have a look carefully on that picture, Kit posted on Twitter with the hashtag Safari Live so everyone can see it. You look at the feet and you can see the picture of the feet, and they've got those incredibly long toes. So I would hesitate to guess at African jacana juvenile, but I will have a better look when I can see it on a bigger screen later after the drive. Absolutely stunning. I'm very excited about this morning. It's nice to have a little bit of a chill in the air. It means the kitty cats might be a bit more active. So it's 19 degrees Celsius and 66. Oh, excuse me. Thank you, Vildi. 66 Fahrenheit. So it's definitely the coolest it's been in a while. And whoa! Oh, what have we here? Was that a leopard track or was that a hyena track? That, unfortunately, is a leopard track going that way. Well, let's check the last position where he had that kudu fetus, and then we'll come back and check this area again. Safari friends, hoping for a Ferrari safari. Me too, Anna-Marie. Hopefully those wild dogs decide to put in their parents and I can exercise my right leg. I got a feeling he's left. Those tracks are heading out, but we will check the last position of the carcass now. Hopefully young quarantine is still within our Travis area. this is the tree, judging from the tracks that the carcass was in. Beautiful low-felt milkberry, devoid of leopard or kudu carcass, so he must have finished munching. So carefully checking the drainage. Nope. So I think those tracks I saw were definitely of him leaving. They look nice and fresh. There's no tracks of insects or other things on them. So I think I need to go check our southern boundary. Hopefully he hasn't made his way across the boundary. And Siberia, morning Siberia, who's one of our zoomies. For our new viewers who are not sure what a zoomie is, zoomies are our wonderful volunteers that man the 24-hour dam cams. So when you see it zooming in on an animal, it could be Siberia. And Siberia would like me to estimate the length and weight of young quarantine, the male leopard we are looking for at the moment. Length, I would have to think about for a little bit, but weight, I probably guess he's around 70 kilograms, so maybe 75, which would put him in pounds. Wildy, you're much smarter than me. What's 70 kilograms in pounds? I have a lost look from wildebeest behind camera. About 140, 150 pounds. Length. With the tail, it's probably a bit longer than me, so I'm going to have to think about that one, Siberia. I will get back to you on that. Length of a male leopard. He's probably as long as he's going to get, but what that is, I can't remember the length of a leopard with its tail. I'm guessing it's over 2 meters. I'm just going to double check in the book here what they say. Yeah, body length about 1.106 meters. That's for Western Cape. Yeah, it's about, in the low veld, up to about 2.5 meters is the length of an adult male leopard. With the tail, of course. Without the tail, this is not good, I'm afraid. I found more tracks of this leopard right on our eastern boundary. And Brian is a bit confused about why there's a leopard named Quarantine. Any tracks going? Yes, they're going that way there. See them there, yeah? There we go. I'm going to get them to show you the tracks now. So Brian, he is named the Quarantine male leopard due to the fact that after he became independent from his mother, there are the tracks of him heading out onto the boundary, but he is hopefully going to stay on the boundary and not disappear to the east of us. There's an area between our two camps and right behind final control, which is called the Quarantine Clearings. So this area in the 1960s was actually cattle farming land, and that area was where they quarantined the cattle before transport. And after he became independent of his mother, we spent most of his time on those clearings, and we found him a lot around Quarantine. So that's how he got his name. Quite often you'll find a lot of leopard names are due to the area they frequent, and especially with males after they become independent. So if you look at, let me try to think of other male leopards. Camp Pan male, one of my favorites from yesteryear. He when he became first independent of his mother, he spent a lot of time around a place called Camp Pan in Singita. So that's why he's called Quarantine. But while we track this leopard, let's go see what Commander Bond is up to.
Right, so we're still here, and I'm afraid there has not been a huge amount of action while you've been gone. That manky mum or plain mother has just been lying there. There's been nothing else from the hole. Those other two hyenas seem to have moved off. So, yeah, not a huge amount going on here. So why don't you tell us what you'd like us to do? We're happy to sit here. Hashtag Safari Live. You want to sit around for a bit longer and wait and see what's going on? Otherwise, we'll move on and see what else the wonders of this little game reserve have to offer us. It might be worth spending a few more minutes here and just seeing whether the little cub doesn't come out. Perhaps getting thirsty and thinking about having a bit of a drink later on. But for the moment, all is quiet here. Well, the birds are singing. It's not physically very quiet at all, but there's not much hyena activity going on here. Now, yesterday morning, I was on a walk, and there's a drainage line or sort of depression, dry riverbed off to the left-hand side there of your screen, and we popped up onto it. I came from the other angle and didn't really know kind of where I was. I knew I was a little sort of around the hyena den. And what we did, we popped up onto the top of the bank there, and we saw exactly where this female's lying here, and the 6-month-old cub was lying there. And from about 300 feet, we spotted the mound. We watched for a little while, and the 6-month-old, I'm sure, saw us. She certainly looked through the bushes at us. We just stayed very still for a while. Don't want to disturb a den like this because it might induce them to move. And then we just kind of melted off into the bush. Wonderful experience to see the hyenas on foot. And I'd quite like to, I think there are certainly examples of people habituating hyena dens to human presence on foot, not close by, but you can do it. If you spend enough time and you're careful enough, you can habituate them to your presence on foot. I wouldn't try it with a big den like this because it's just the chances of making them move are too high. But certainly on a newer den, it might be worth doing at some stage. Temperament changes any more than sort of yours does. When it gets very hot, you will probably find some shade to lie in, or you'll become less active, and that's exactly the same for just about all the animals out here. When it gets very hot, they just become less active. They find some shade to lie in. Or in the hyena's case, they will often urinate on the ground and then lie in that to try and keep cool. That's a pretty common thing for them to do. So, the temperament won't change. Their activity levels will certainly drop, though. I'm mentioning the heat. I'm sitting here now, scratching away at my arm, wondering why it's so itchy. And I remember now that it always happens out here in the bush. The sun seems to dry the skin out, and it takes a little while for the skin to get used to the sort of heat and the constant battering that it takes every day. And then all the way from Pennsylvania, we're looking at an adult female here, probably a high-ranking female. And Debbie in Pennsylvania, you want to know what she weighs. She weighs about 70 kilograms. Now, if you translate that to pounds, you multiply it by 2.2, and so I'm going to guess at about 160 to 170 pounds. That's what a female hyena like this will weigh. The male's much less. They can be as little as 50. Which is about 120 pounds. No, it's not, it's 110 pounds. Now, this is a very good question coming through here from Philadelphia. Jan, you want to know if a hyena, once instructed to go inside, the cub is told to go inside, will they come out? No, Jan, they won't. The hyenas are amazingly disciplined. All predators, cubs generally, are very disciplined, and it mainly happens as soon as the mother is not around. As soon as there's no adult presence, the cubs will disappear inside. They will not come out again until they're called by the adults. So, for example, were there some lions to arrive here, the mother would just get up and walk off and disappear into the bush, leaving the entire den exposed. But because of the way that those holes are designed inside, you'll find that the hyena cubs will be perfectly safe, and they wouldn't come out until the hyena mothers came back, stuck their heads into the holes and made a very low growling call. Not even the mothers can get to the cubs in the bottom of those holes. Very safe, very clever spots for the cubs to live. All right, I think we've probably spent enough time here. We're into the diminishing returns. The morning is wasting a bit, so let's head out from here and see if we can't find something else. I think Scott made mention of a big herd of buffalo coming down this way, so maybe we'll head across there and see if we can't find that. Otherwise, who knows what else the morning will bring. We might pop across to Arathusa and see what's on that side. Okay, here we go. Depressingly, that quarantine has decided to leave us. As I started the engine, your question, Virginia, came through in Kentucky. Virginia, I think what you were asking was that how hyenas react on foot to human beings. And what normally happens, even if you surprise a hyena, Virginia, is that they will run away. You'd have to really corner a hyena to make it attack you. And that's the same with just about any animal out here. So if you corner an animal, you get it into a position where it doesn't feel like it can run away from you, then you find yourself in a little bit of danger. Excuse the noise. Careful the aerial there, tipped. I'm just going to... There we go. Right, out we go. So it's the same with any animal, Virginia. You know, if you corner any animal, it's going to get upset and it will attack. But if it can get away from you, it won't. That goes for snakes, it goes for lions, it goes for leopards, it goes for hyenas, it will go for something as small as a duiker or a steenbok. And it goes for a human being too. If you think of humans who are, who don't like conflict, they will always move away from conflict until they feel that there's a point beyond which they cannot get away anymore. Even then, the most meek and mild human being will have a physical reaction. Right, ease our way out of here. Very bumpy in this car. From the den now, and this den has been used, I think probably you'll find, for many years by this clan, and part of that, of course, is extensive territorial marking that hyenas do. And Brian, you're a viewer who started with us as a result of Big Cat Week. That's great news. Welcome. You want to know if they have a communal potty area or latrine? They do, actually. Not so much around the den, but absolutely around their clan territory. They will have latrine areas, so you'll find areas where that very distinctive white dung is deposited by a number of them. Around that den, they won't go. They will urinate there, but they don't tend to defecate too much. That'll be used around the sort of clan territory. And the territory is quite large, and the territory probably fills up. I think that clan goes into Arathusa, so it uses at least the size of this reserve, and probably down onto Cheetah Plains. I suspect they were eating those buffalo last night, so I'd say probably at least sort of 6,000 acres, and maybe a bit more for this clan territory. Not as big, say, as nothing like the size of a wild dog home range, and not as big as a lion pride territory. Speaking of which, we haven't seen lions on this particular piece of the reserve for some time now. Lots of hyena tracks on the road here, which tell me that they were out foraging last night to and from the den. Try and find you at a track if the light is correct. It's nice. Just give you an idea of what I'm talking about. I made mention of the fact that the females are bigger than the males, and that results, Tana, you're in Los Angeles, it results in them not spending an enormous amount of time together. They often, in fact, other than when they're mating, you will seldom see hyenas together. So the males are completely dominated, and that means that they often go off and forage on their own. They're often not in groups even. They often will be completely alone. They'll come around just to mate, but they won't spend time around the den. They don't spend time with the cubs. They play no role in sort of parental care. So they lurk about, they do a bit of mating, and then they sort of forage about on their own. They will come together. The whole clan will come together if there's a territorial fight, or if there happens to be something that they want to steal from lions. So let's say the lions, or even a leopard kill. Let's say lions kill a buffalo somewhere, and there are no male lions there, and there's insufficient kind of. It's quite interesting. Tips. Just put the camera down on that white stuff there. And they will come together to steal. There we have some hyena marking. That is definitely white dung that has come. It certainly wasn't white when it came out. It's probably very recently white. It would have been green when it came out. And then as soon as the sun hit it this morning, it probably oxidized. I don't think that was there yesterday. I think I walked past this area yesterday. I didn't see that there. So a fairly, runny event some hyena had here, leaving a very clear trail. Now, often that will happen in groups. So you will see these sort of latrine areas where the hyenas are marking territory in groups. Righty. Continue up the road here. Opened up a really wonderful discussion topic here. I'm just going to ask you a question once more so that I can get it completely correct. I'm just going to pull off the road here to let Aubrey go past. Tractor on the front of his vehicle. Aye, ninjani kwala. Itagele kumvona. Okay, that's all we will tell her. Now, Judy in Canada. Your question is, okay, we were looking at the ugly mother there. Well, we've called her Manky. I've called her Manky, probably very unkindly. And you say, if there's a reason out here sort of size and strength and power to be the quintessential, the predicators of mating opportunities and that sort of thing. Is there a reason for that to happen in human society? It doesn't happen in human society. Well, Judy, absolutely. And so let's deal with the hyenas first. Hyenas are, I don't believe that many animals have a sort of kind of physical attraction in the same way that we do, where I'm sure they pick up on physical signs that we don't pick up on, and but so what looks like a pretty hyena to us may well look like a very ugly hyena to another hyena. But that's predicated on various other factors that I'm not sure we can understand. In human beings, we know a few things, and you will be able to pick these up and you will know about them. The things that generally make a man attractive to a woman are, and I mean, this is just purely from a biological point of view, are status, and status, of course, is predicted by wealth in these days, and the reason that is attractive is that if you have status as a man in human society, you are able then to raise offspring. You will, as a man, will hand over that status to your offspring. So often for men, you can be a fairly ugly fellow, but as long as you've got some status and wealth, you will be attractive to women, because it means that you are able to raise offspring, and their offspring will be supported, and they will then inherit your status. Now, the same cannot be said, the flip side of the coin. In human society, and I'm sure this will change as we have more equal rights, but for many thousands of years, men have kind of dominated the human societal space, very patriarchal societies that we still live in many respects. And so when a child is born, it very seldom inherits its mother's status. So even if a mother is born to a wealthy family, the child born to her will very seldom assume her status. And so instead of status being an attractive thing in women, it's often a much more physical attraction, and that physical attraction is just predicated by our own sort of biases, and also by parasite resistance, quite interestingly. But that's a whole another discussion that we can get into later on. So Judy, wonderful question. Thank you very much for it, and I hope that I've answered your question. And if I haven't, please fire through some more like that. I find the whole subject of why we humans find each other attractive and unattractive really, really fascinating. Let's head across to Brent, find out what he's doing. I'm just going to get a bit of an update on the radio and see if I can't decide definitively where we are going to go next. We'll see you just now.
So, unfortunately, tracks of that young male leopard quarantine have crossed out of our Traverse area. But as one leaves, one arrives, and we're now on the tracks of Tingana, adult male leopard, and he's heading towards the Buffelsmith Waterhole. And we've got tracks going down Hippo Pools Road at the moment. The road's a bit hard, so I can't actually show you the tracks, but I can still see them. Oh, track of the aerial. Let's put that back down. It has loosed itself from its hold. Try pop it down there. Thank you very much, Vim. Now, if you ever work in the wildlife film industry, everything is run with duct tape and cable ties. Bungee cords, as Vim says. That's how we keep everything going. forget anything fancy. You can't live without this stuff. Thank you, Ben. Nice and clear. Hopefully he's still around. So while we are following up on this leopard, Jose in Virginia says he's a photographer, and one of the most exciting things is getting home and popping them on the computer. I keep a database of all the photographs I take. I do, Jose. And it's strange as the longer you take photos, the less photos you take. So I do keep a database, and I do get really excited when I do download and start editing. And you sort of know when you've got that epic shot now. And very, very exciting. I got, let me show you, I think, a really awesome shot a day or two ago of James and an elephant. Let me see, it's here. But there we go. A really cool photograph. James was with a nice big Ellie bull. There you can see it. So I do get that same rush, Jose. I wish I was better at my record keeping. Pretty good with the lions and leopards and stuff, but with general photographs I'm a bit naughty. And then these tracks are just so beautiful, I have to show them to you. I'm pretty sure these are tracks of Tingana. Nice big tracks. They're bigger than Young Quarantine's tracks. And there we go, you can see them there. Heading down towards, oopsie, Buffalo's Hook. I'm sort of hoping that, look at that. Nice, Baldy. It is pristine clear in the soft sand there. Let's as we're following these tracks, as I said, I'm quite sure they're Tingana's tracks, not Young Quarantine's tracks. Kathy, who's in Tennessee, says, how do I know which tracks belong to which leopard? Well, I don't always know. Quite often, you can sort of work it out on the area you see the tracks. Although it's becoming a little bit difficult to discern tracks between Mvula and Tingana. Now, this is the furthest to the north and east we've ever seen Tingana's tracks. We know it's Tingana because he was left across our southern boundary heading in this direction last night. Quarantine tracks are a little bit smaller than this, not much. The only leopard track I can generally tell straight off that is very different from the others is Karula. And when you spend a lot of time looking at different tracks, you can start seeing nuances between the tracks. But generally, you sort of make an educated guess on the area you're in terms of whose tracks they are, or on other information. Like I'm working on information that Tingana was heading this way last night and was left very close to our eastern boundary at the exact junction where we found the tracks. So. But Karula's tracks are very, very small compared to other leopards. I mean, even Shadow's tracks are quite a bit bigger than Karula's. So that's how I generally figure out Karula. knows that his winter is our summer. He's just wondering whether this morning is unusually cool. There's the tracking team on the other side of Buffels Hook. Roger. Not really. We've had some overcast and cool days, so to have a slightly cool morning is not unusual. It's quite pleasant though, but not unusual at this time of the year. I'm just going to update Scott on his tracks. Just make sure they haven't gone that way. I think he's gone this way. I'm just going to double check where the ground's a bit softer over the rise. And he hasn't gone that way. Oh, good morning, fowl. Some helmeted guinea fowl. And at this time of the year, we've seen them in pairs rather than flocks, and they've paired off to create the next generation of guinea fowl. I'm going to update Scotty on those tracks. Scott. Scotty, you got the tracks of what I assume is Tingana that came up towards Buffels Hook. He's drunk at the little sort of pan next to the road, and then headed southwest on Quarry Pan Road. Copy, thanks. Yeah, I think there's a good chance that these tracks are going to head towards Vertella and was the leopard that was seen and heard on the Djuma Dam cam. Copy, thanks. Oh, and we're going to go and see what James has got. James is definitely jealous of this animal's, how do we put this animal's dominance in the heights department.
You know, sometimes jokes do get old, and sometimes they don't. In the case of Brent Leo Smith's joke about my height, which he makes at least 4.5 times every hour, it's getting a bit old, really. That giraffe, however, is not old. She is very beautiful, and she's eating from a ziziphus, or buffalo thorn tree. Now, of course, the reason we use the term ziziphus is because it's just fun to say. So while you're sitting there at home, I've asked a few of you to do this before, say ziziphus a few times, and don't look embarrassed if your family looks at you and asks you why you're saying ziziphus. But it's a very satisfying thing to say. And Brent has apparently just made another very amusing joke, ha 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 ha, which he makes almost as often as my height joke, and that is that the joke is as old as I am. I am profoundly amused. Can you hear it in my voice? Can you hear how amusing I find Brent this morning? But you can see that tree is having a bit of a smashing from the giraffe, and that's because they taste really good, those leaves. Even to human beings, they're pretty good. They're a great salad substitute, and supposedly protected by the vicious thorns on the tree. But you can see the giraffe, is wrapping its tongue around branches that you wouldn't touch, simply because of the thorns, and it's having no effect whatsoever on the giraffe. She's a very lovely individual. Very elegant. And you'll find I've seen her before. She's been in the company of a much lighter female with her calf, and I don't know where they are at the moment. They do have these sort of loose social arrangements, and I'm not sure that they're as loose as we think they are. Giraffe do communicate visually, obviously, because they're much taller than everything else, even taller than Brent Smith. They're able to look at each other, over fairly large distances. And also, what you'll find is that they communicate with what we know as infrasound, but like an elephant does, so frequency too low for us to hear. So I think you'll find that other female and her calf are around here somewhere, lurking in the bushes, also eating some Sisyphus. Lovely morning. It's going to get hot though, but it is a very beautiful morning at the moment. You can hear a few drongos off to the north of us. A wonderful question from a new viewer. Hello Sierra, very good to have you along. You're just 14 years old and you want to know how on earth you tell the giraffe's age. Sierra, it's not easy. And if ever you have a guide who gives you a definitive age, you should be very suspicious that they are having a wild guess and telling you a yarn. Giraffe live to probably about 20 to 25 years in the wild. Difficult to tell because we often don't, we don't follow them from calf all the way to adulthood. They move around too much. So probably 20 to 25 years, that's about average for an animal of this size. Now she is fully grown, so we know that she's well above, they'll achieve full height probably at about 5 years. So she's over 5 years old. Now the next thing you've got to look at, Sierra, is the neck. Does it have any of those kind of filarial parasite holes? So all giraffes have got a parasite that lives on the skin and it eats away some of the skin. And you can see a little bit halfway down, just under the main region, you can see a little bit of grey there. And that little grey bit there, pretty much in the middle of your screen, is a bit of that parasite, but not too much. So I would say well under 20 years, and then we look at the head and we see that kind of calcification of the skull. It's much more prominent in males, but it does happen a bit in females too. Does she have any calcification of the skull? Is there a sort of bump between the two horns? No, not really. So, Sierra, I would say that this is a giraffe in fine health and sort of the bloom of adulthood. I'd put her at just under 10 years old, maybe just over. So let's say between 8 and 12 years. There is the guess. I might be completely wrong. She could be as old as 15, she could be as young as 7. But I would say between 10 and 12 years. Very difficult to tell unless you know exactly when they were born. Now, Lois and Buffalo, you say that the giraffe looked like it was amused by Brent's comment. I think that, Lois, you might be incorrect there. I certainly haven't told the giraffe, and the giraffe, the ones that I have spoken to around here, say that Brent needs to diversify his joke book a little. Certainly, she was one of them. I spoke to her about it yesterday, and she was of the opinion that while it was quite amusing the first 47 times she heard it, she feels that there should be some form of diversification in the joke book. And it's actually quite an interesting subject, that quite apart from the fact that Brent and I are bantering away with each other. We were asking, Judy, you were asking from Canada, what makes men and women attractive to each other. One of the things, of course, that the first thing that you will notice about a man as a woman quite often, and in fact that men notice about other men, is their height. It's the first thing that we will notice. And initially, taller men are certainly more attractive than shorter ones, and that's to both men and women. And that's just something deep within our history about the warrior that we look for. Casey in Nebraska, you should tell Brent that I was built low to the ground for speed and endurance. Casey, I think that's very kind of you to say that. And Brent is certainly not slow. His endurance is very poor, but that's mainly because of a fitness regime that would make lions look active. But thank you very much, Casey. I will definitely put that to him. You can see moving from Sisyphus tree to Sisyphus tree. We've just got an open there. And she's coming a little bit closer. And Anna-Marie, you've noticed a streak under her eye there, and you want to know what it is. I'm now looking with my binoculars. We've got zoomed in as close as we can. Anna-Marie, it just looks like a tear mark. It's kind of moisture has seeped from the eye and then got kind of, it's obviously been quite sticky and it's just dirty. It's got a whole lot of dust on it now. But it's certainly not an injury of any kind. It's some sort of seepage from the eye. And you'll find that their eyes will seep. It's not unusual. Look at her face. Look where it's going. It's sticking in amongst some very vicious thorns. I've no doubt that even though the eyelashes and the eyelids are designed specifically to protect the eyes from those thorns, I've no doubt the odd one gets in there, and so they will seep. They will sort of produce tears to get the sort of to get the thorns and irritations out of those eyes. Now, often we're asked what else is related to a giraffe, and Brian, you have correctly identified the only other member of the giraffe family, and that is called an okapi. I don't actually have a picture of an okapi with me because we don't find them here. You find them in the Central African rainforests, and that's where you'll find an okapi. Sort of smaller than this, much smaller in fact, longish neck, the same kind of markings on it, but if you would like to have a Google of them, they look fascinating animals, and I'd really love to see one. Brent Smith is hailing me on the radio. I'm just going to talk to him. I'm obviously going to be very surly about it, given his plethora of insults. Go ahead. There. I hope that was surly enough. I've only driven the fire break down to Sandy Patch. I'm on Sandy Patch and in Impala Road. So he's just asking for an update as to where I've been and where I've checked for tracks, because he's obviously hot on the trail of Tingana, and he thinks that those tracks that he was on at Buffelshoek Dam, because they turned and went southwest back towards Vuyatela Dam or Djuma Dam, he thinks maybe those tracks are actually prior to him being seen by Chris Rogue at 1:20 yesterday at the Djuma Dam. So Scott's also in the area, going to help him out and see if they can't pick up on Tingana. Now, what that giraffe is looking at is some impala that are walking around behind us. Very aware. So while she looks like she's pretty relaxed eating those leaves, delicious breakfast, she will be watching very carefully what's going on with all the other animals. Now, I've been referring to her as she the whole time. Jose, you want to know how on earth I can tell this is a she rather than a he. Jose, the most obvious thing to look for is a very clear protuberance between the back legs. You can tell a male immediately. This female doesn't have that, but you can also see on the head. So if you only see her head sticking up, which is what we initially saw, you can see that the horns are very delicate. They've got hair on them, on the top of them. They're much smaller than a male's horns. A male's horns will be much thicker, and they'll be bald on the top from where they've been fighting with each other. And also, because the males thwack their heads against each other so often, you'll find that what I was talking about as the calcification of the skull, the bump on the skull, they get them much more much bigger head, and they've always got these, the older they get very gnarled kind of bumps and ossifications on the top of the head. Good question, Jose. She looks like an elegant female, though. And we are very much in the sort of throes of the birthing season for many of the herbivores. And Susan in Tennessee, you want to know if I think she could be pregnant. I do think she could be pregnant, Susan. She has got a very fat belly on her. And of course, animals here don't get fat like we do. They only swell when there's a reason for it. And yeah, it certainly looks like she is quite heavy around the belly, so maybe she is pregnant. Baby giraffes are fantastic things to watch. Look how confiding she is. She's coming right past us. It's wonderful. Barbara, we were chatting about the okapi and the fact that that is the only representative of the giraffe family. You want to know if a camel is in the same family? No, it's not. It's a common misconception. I often thought it was, before I became a guide, I used to think a camel was in the same family as well, but they are not. I'm not too sure about the kind of taxonomic classification of a camel. I do know, however, that the giraffe and the okapi are the only two representatives from the giraffe family. Now she's just checking us out. She likes the look of Tebs. And just to warn you, everybody, tomorrow is Tebs' birthday, so, you know, plan your day around the celebration of Tebs' birthday tomorrow. Tebs, how old are you turning again?
27.
27 years old. Gracie, aged 8, from Ohio. First of all, why are you not in bed? I'm sure you should be in bed. And secondly, thank you very much for your comment. You say that even though I'm shorter than Brent, I am taller than you. Gracie, I'm probably not much taller than you, but thank you. That's very kind of you. And you say, would I like you to put Brent on the naughty list? Brent is permanently on the naughty list in my books, Gracie. So yes, put him on the list. We'll send him to the corner. It'll have to be a fairly large corner, though. Now, just looking at the back end of this giraffe now, you can see she is swollen from both sides, and I think she is definitely pregnant. Well spotted. I don't think she's about to give birth. She's just going to relieve herself of some pellets. Now, quite apart from that being an unusual thing to see, what she's doing there, well, we know what she's doing, it's obvious, but it's interesting how small those little pellets are, and the crucial thing about that is that they are very efficient at using water, giraffe. They don't have to drink nearly as much as other animals of similar size, like a buffalo, and those little pellets have almost completely dry. Now, Jenny M., what we may have noticed as she was standing there, we noticed on the inside of her legs, and certainly while we were watching her backside there are ticks there, and you say, does she have any trouble with them? Well, all animals out here will have a certain amount of trouble with ticks. They have help from oxpeckers, which will remove the ticks from their bodies. And yes, I think there's definitely an immunity, though, that they build up towards the diseases and parasites that are transferred by ticks, much more so than a domestic animal would in this particular environment. But the oxpeckers definitely play a role in that, and that swishing of the tail constantly also plays a role. She's a rather wonderful young giraffe. Right, let's head across to the tall and magnificent specimen that is Brent Leo Smith. Well, certainly in his opinion anyway. He's got an interesting caterpillar to show you. We'll just get into another position. It's a great giraffe.
How incredible is this? It's a little moth larvae, which one it is, but I think from the family, it's one of the tussock moths or gypsy moths, and there are quite a few species. But I've looked through and I can't see any one that is exactly the same as this, so I think this is another one to be sent off to the lepidoptery experts. But really, really incredible. Now, this is not one you want to touch. Those very fine hairs will create an amazing itch on your body if you did. But I've been very careful. When I've held him, I'm going to put him back where I found him on the grass now. Unfortunately, hopefully he doesn't hit reverse. There's not much room for mistake when dealing with hairy caterpillars. We found him. We just managed to see him walking across the road, and he was heading towards the grass, so I'm going to put him back and carry on. And I think let's go back from me, a tall, magnificent creature, to the other tall, magnificent creatures that are still with James.
Hiding behind this bush here. So while we're driving along, I'm going to ask Tebs to just zoom in onto the dashboard here, where there is an example of Sisyphus that she's been eating. Now you can see those thorns beautifully silhouetted in the rising sun there, and I promise you, you don't want to be putting your fingers on or your tongue on that. That will go right into any piece of you. How the giraffes managed to do it, we're not entirely sure. Try and get around the corner and get another view of her. If she's gone into some thick stuff, we will move on. It's a bit embarrassing if she's disappeared entirely without my noticing. No, there she is. Just over there. She comes. Standing right next to another Sisyphus tree, so she's going from tree to tree, same species. She's just watching us quite carefully too. They are very inquisitive, our giraffe. Isn't she great? So, just a little bit about giraffe social structure. We chatted a bit earlier about, her being alone and whether she is alone entirely or not. And Sacrosanct and CBS Johnson, you want to know if she is completely alone or what's going on with her sort of social life. She is alone at the moment. But like I was saying, giraffe do have loose associations, or small herds, and I don't think they're as loose as we think they are. I think that she will know. I've seen her in the company in the last few days of another female, another big cow, and her small calf. And I think you'll find that she knows where they are, and they're probably within, if they're not in visual contact with each other, I think they're probably within infrasonic contact of each other. So they probably are communicating infrasonically. so below the frequency that we can hear, and that's the sort of general way it is with giraffes. Sometimes you'll see, I think the biggest number I've seen around this area was 30 giraffe together, and then those loose sort of herds will break up and they'll make much smaller groups. The bulls are often on their own. It's much less common to see the females on their own. See there, the thing that is shining out of the bushes the most, of course, is the white of her ears. And Gwendolyn, you want to know if that's normal. It's completely normal. She's got absolutely normal ears. I have to admit they do look a little bit shinier than the others. I think it's because she's quite dark, though, that we're noticing it more than we might on another giraffe. Well observed. Is a very beautiful example. And also you will read, and some people will tell you that giraffe, the darker they are, you can tell how old they are. That I believe to be completely untrue. This is not an old giraffe, and she's much darker than many of the other giraffe I've seen. I think it's just like with us. You get brunette giraffe, and you also get blonde giraffe. And I thought that this giraffe was probably about 10 to 12 years old. And Jane, you're in Mississippi, you want to know when they become sexually mature. She could probably have her first calf at about age 4, probably 5 though, but I'd say at age 4. And then the males, of course, will be sexually mature around about the same time. Their ability to mate, they're not big enough to mate until much later on. They'll have to compete with other much bigger males for mating opportunities, and that's probably not until they're about 8 or 9, I would say. Maybe a bit before that. We'll drive through here because she's looking constantly around this direction, and I suspect that's where that other cow and her calf are. There's our giraffe. I can't see the others. Now, we've been slowly moving around here, and she's been slowly sort of ambling between Ziziphus bushes. And Jenny M, you want to know how fast they run. Well, they don't never look like they're running fast until you try and sort of keep up with them. They look like they're running in slow motion. It's the most tremendous thing to see, but they are not slow. I'd say in probably at least 40, well, no, maybe not quite that fast. Say at least 30 miles an hour they'll be able to run. It's pretty quick. I say this every day, but it is astonishing. There's another Twitter handle that I really find marvelously amusing, and that's Approach the Bench. Hello, Approach the Bench in Ohio. You want to know, how do we avoid the ticks as human beings? And we walk through the bush with exposed legs, and Approach the Bench is a very good question. Because you can get quite sick out here from the ticks. You can get a disease called tick bite fever. It's nothing like as severe as the Lyme disease you can get in the States, but it will lay you low for a few days. Approach the Bench, what we do is you basically look for ticks and pick them off like a baboon would, or like a monkey would. You can get spray that you can put on your legs to sort of make them avoid you. Some guys like Steph and Brian, they both wear gaiters or sort of coverings on the lower legs, and that helps to keep some of the ticks off. But basically, you've just got to look for them and then pick them off with your hands. That's the best way. I don't worry about it too much. Once you've been in an area for a while, and if you've had tick bite fever once from a particular area, you won't get it again. You may, if you get absolutely savaged, you may get a mild headache, but you certainly don't. This is actually quite interesting. You don't get sick from it. Watch her now. She's not eating anymore. Her stomach, the first chamber of her ruminant stomach is obviously now full, and she's chewing the cud. So she stopped picking new leaves, and she's now re-chewing the Ziziphus. Watch her mouth. You can see her cheek pouch is getting emptier and emptier and emptier, and now she'll swallow. Come on, there we go. Now watch her throat. The next bolus is going to come up. Watch her throat. There we go. This is quite interesting. Julia Smith, you in Houston, and you say you've been watching her belly, and you say it's moving. Tibbs, can you see it moving? From the baby, maybe. Julia, that's fascinating. We will have a look. She's now hiding, of course, behind a gory bush as she chews her cud. And I've said this before, but I'm quite glad I don't have to eat Ziziphus twice in a day for my breakfast. Once off the tree and once from the stomach. Justin, a very good question that I'm not sure I can answer. You want to know how it is. Let's just zoom in on the stomach there, Tibbs, and see if we can't see any movement there. How it is that a giraffe is able to make such small pellets when something like a buffalo can't. I don't know, Justin. I think it's just got to do with the very efficient intestine that basically sucks all the water out of the food. Now, the reason a buffalo, for example, which is a similar sized animal, mass animal, well, it's not, it's actually much smaller, but they're the other very large ruminant that we have out here. The reason they're unable to do that is that they are grazers. So they eat grass, which doesn't have as much moisture quite often as the leaves that the giraffe has. And they, in order to eat that dry grass, have to drink water, which means in order to process it, it's obviously often isn't as richly nutrient. It's not as nutrient rich as the leaves, and so they do have to drink a lot more water, and that's why their dung is so much more, it's so much wetter. The giraffe, because of the nutrients in the leaves that they have, don't have to necessarily drink water in order to process it. They don't have to eat quite as much, and so they're able to extract the water from the food that they eat with a very efficient intestine. And that's why it comes out as a sort of dry pellets. Justin, that's the best answer I can give you, I'm afraid. I think that's probably pretty accurate, though. Sampling this Ziziphus, it's delicious. And I think this is my favorite Twitter handle, Wingnut. Wingnut, we want to know what the gestation period of a giraffe is, given that she's pregnant, and can we tell how far along she is. Wingnut, the giraffe, is the only ruminant with a gestation period of over a year. 14 months, if I'm not mistaken, is the giraffe's gestation period. And can I tell how far along she is? I would be guessing, Wingnut, but given when she turned her backside to us and you could see the swelling from both sides, I would say she's at least a year along, maybe close to birth. Obviously, they will try and time the births for around about this time. It's a very wide-ranging thing. So, I mean, they'll try and time the birth to the rainy season, which can be any time between sort of November and March. Nice question. Thank you, Wingnut. Often asked about orphans out here and what happens with orphaned animals, and the fate really does depend on the species. And rather, you want to know what would happen to an orphaned giraffe calf. If a giraffe was to die, would its calf be adopted by another female? I'd say almost universally not. No, Robbie. I think you'd find that the calf would die, simply because, you know, if another female is lactating, she's going to be only producing enough milk for the baby that she has. So I don't think that you will find that there is the adoption that goes on in, say, elephant herds, or amongst, well, a little bit amongst lions, but elephants are the main ones that will adopt. She is really covered in ticks though in her backside. Her backside is filled with nasty ticks there. Now, lots of chewing if you happen to be a ruminant. If you're any herbivore, there's an enormous amount of chewing that has to go on. You've got special teeth, special molars designed, well, a bit like our molars. So if you can feel the molars in your own mouth, that's pretty much what the grinding surface of a herbivore's molars feels like. And Whitney, you want to know if, like a horse, they grind down as they get used. Yes, they absolutely do grind down, but they do keep growing. A very old giraffe, you can see that the teeth have almost ground down, but I think you'll find that they do keep growing, because otherwise, if they didn't, they would grind down rather too fast. And so they keep growing very slowly. And I know that, and you comparing it to horses, I know that the horses I've known have sometimes had to have their teeth filed. And that is because they grow all the time. Obviously, a domestic horse doesn't use his teeth quite the same as a wild one would. Alrighty, I think we should leave this giraffe and press on and see what we can find. And before we do that, though, I'm just going to give Tebs his breakfast. Tebs, here is some Ziziphus for you. I've just had mine. It's actually quite delicious. There you go. Tell me what you think. Not bad, eh? Much better than some of the other leaves you'd have to eat. And I'd happily put that on a salad.
Tasty.
Very tasty. I'm glad I don't have to wrap my tongue around the thorns, though. Right, on we go. Knoxville, Tennessee. You say you're graduating with a degree in chemical engineering this year, and yet you still learn 10 new things every time you come on safari with us. Darren, I'm so very pleased that is the case, and congratulations that you're going to be a chemical engineer. Right, let's see what else we can find down this road. I know Karula was around here yesterday, 11-year-old Queen of Juma, so with any luck we'll find some of her tracks. If not, I'm going to get an update from Arathusa just now and see what's going on there. Some tracks of elephants on the road. And while we're driving down here, let's head across to Brent, see what he's found, see what his update with Tingana's tracks are. I'll see if he's found.
So we're still on the tracks of this male leopard Tingana. It's absolutely incredible. We've now been following them for about 6 kilometers. Scotty's also on helping us out here. But we followed him all the way from the eastern boundary. He's now gone down into Philemon's Dip, but into an area where there's some buffalo bulls, so we can't walk. So we're looping around and we're going to trek our southern boundary. Even if these tracks cross, it's unbelievable that we've been able to follow the tracks for this long. So really exciting. And so Chris Rogue, the leopard you saw on the Juma cam in the early hours of this morning, was certainly Tingana. We've tracked him almost to that exact spot and then beyond. Double check the next junction, see if he didn't change his mind, change direction. He's done that twice so far while we've been tracking. Who's 6 years old and joining us from Minnesota. Welcome on the safari, Ethan. Ethan would like to know, is it true that elephants are the only mammal that can't jump? Well, Ethan, I've actually seen baby elephants jump, so I don't think adults can, but babies can definitely hop rather than jump. But it's probably not true. I would say, I don't know. I would say probably manatees and dugongs, which are aquatic mammals. I've never heard or seen them jump. A quick look here. No tracks. So we're going to check very carefully down our southern boundary now. So basically he's done almost a big triangle. He's come in from the east, he's gone past Buffalo's Hook to the Juma Dam camp, and then he's cut straight south. Hopefully he got sidetracked by a baby wildebeest or impala and hasn't left our area. But he's definitely on a mission the way he's walking. Updated. The Birmingham boys, I'm sure you heard and you saw that wonderful video from the guest that killed 3 buffalo to the east of us. They have basically abandoned those buffalo. There's only 1 there and the rest have moved off. So I wonder what they're up to now. I know they found 1 just to the east of us who's mating with a female, and another 2 nearby there, so there's still 1 missing. And there's Andrew, who's also following up on his leopard tracks. Mr. Moustache, I said, is booked his safari at Arathusa for next year. Can't wait to get there. Well, Mr. Moustache, hopefully we will see you while we're out on safari. Was that there, Vim? A little bit back. Just that track. Oh, it's just a running civet track. Step Iron Girl, who's a YouTube follower, would like to know if we've got any updates on my favorite animal, the African wild dog. Sorry, just looking at some tracks there. One pack has disappeared way to the southeast of us into Mala Mala, and the other pack was seen on the border of the Manyeleti and the property to the north of us, Buffels Hook. So hopefully that's quite close. Hopefully they decide to put in an appearance either sometime this morning or on the sunset safari. I'm concentrating quite hard. We don't want to miss tracks of this male leopard. Subject of tracking, which we are busy doing at the moment. A warm welcome to Matthew, who's in LA, one of my favorite cities in the US. And Matthew would like to know, from looking at the different tracks, can you tell whether a leopard's walking, running, stalking? You can, Matthew, and you can. It can be quite difficult. Stalking, you see all of a sudden the back foot starts falling exactly where the front foot was, which is opposed to walking, where you can quite often see both sets of tracks. Running, the tracks become a lot more blurred, and sometimes in very soft sand, in very soft mud, you can actually see the claws come out when they're running. So you can, and hopefully we find the leopard that's attached to these tracks. So far so good. There's no tracks crossing the southern boundary, and I am checking very, very carefully. Hopefully he's in here somewhere. So far just lots of buffalo bull tracks. Still on the subject of tracking, Jose, thanks for another question, Jose, who's in Virginia, would like to know, what is the longest I've ever tracked an animal? I'm trying to think now, Jose. I think the longest I've ever tracked an animal, probably in southern Tanzania. We tracked from finding the tracks to finding the animal, a male lion, for about 16 kilometers. And actually, I lied, the longest I've ever tracked an animal was a black rhino, and we followed those tracks for over 20 kilometers before we found the rhino. But those are definitely the two longest single tracking excursions I've been on, in terms of distance, not time. So this is the spot I'm most worried about the tracks crossing. So I'm just going to check very, very quickly. Anything outside? So far, very good news. I just want to check a little bit further ahead in case he took a shortcut. Fine and sunny good morrow to Gwen. Gwen would like to know, at what age are young male leopards safe from attack from old male leopards? And to be honest, Gwen, there's no safe age for a male leopard to be under attack by another male leopard, but they generally, once they hold territory from about 5-6 years old, they are sort of more safe, but male leopards will compete for territory throughout their years. So while we're tracking leopard, and this is the wonderful thing about being out in the bush, there's a big herd of elephants, it looks like, in front of me, so we're going to go a bit closer. We can just see a grey bottom through the bush. So we're going to do a quick sync test, so excuse me clapping before I get close to the elephants, with the VR rig. You turned them off, Phildy. I'm just waiting. Verm is in charge of the buttons. You should never give me buttons, I push them too often. Okay, so let's wait for the red flashing lights. Okay, red flashing lights, count to 5, and I'm just going to clap, so it's a sync. Let's go look at the ellies. So, while in search of this male leopard, for those of you who might have just joined us, we've come across what looked to be a nice breeding herd of elephant, from what I could see. Let's have a look if we can get a bit closer to them. Hello, elephants. See 2 or 3 at the moment. Now, very important to watch an elephant's behavior from a little bit of a distance. And that female's not 100% happy with us, so we're not going to go any closer to her. But the other looks to be a young bull in front of us, and they're generally a lot more relaxed. But this herd is not very relaxed, and we do have such great elephant sightings. I'm going to try and get you a visual, but then I think I'm going to let them move off. There's no need to harass the wonderful animals we live with out here in the bush. And you probably find with females looking a little bit harassed because this young male is around and he might be the harassee. And one must remember, you can see herds of elephants, the same herd of elephants on different days, and their mood will be completely different, and you need to judge and gauge that accordingly. That's how you don't get full of holes. And she's moving off, so the young bull's still here though. For Steph, who's watching on YouTube, says elephants are their favorite animals. Steph, they're one of my favorites as well. Oh, very interesting, very, very interesting. So we've got this lovely Ellie bull, and shaking his head, and around his feet are a flock of wattled starlings that are feeding on all the insects. And you can see he's on fire. Let's stay on the Ellie just for a second. I think he's going to move off. So he's being a bit full of nonsense. And you can see he's on 5 legs this morning as well. And I think that's the reason the females aren't relaxed. He's probably being full of testosterone and causing some trouble. So he's probably around, I'd guess, 18, 19 years old. Oh, look at him showing off. So with these young Ellie bulls like this, even their reactions are quite easy to judge. And I think he's definitely in a trouble-causing mood this morning. Look at that, flying in behind him. Oh, we'll have a look now. There's a lot of birds, but I'm just going to be on the Game Drive channel for a second. Standing by. There's the wattled starlings. Copy, thanks very much, Andrew. Have you got any in Konzo yet? No. Look at that, isn't that incredible? And the drongo there. Copy, thanks, Andrew. There's a small clump of Ndlov just to the east of Weaver's Nest junction with Gary Main. Let's move back. So actually I've seen quite a few different birds following this early around. There's the wattled starlings, there's a fork-tailed drongo, there was even a woodlands kingfisher. Thanks, Scott. So hopefully we're going to be able to see some of these birds a bit clearer now that the Ellie's a little bit more out in the open. We're just going to slowly roll forward. And you can see at his back feet there's a whole flock of wattled starlings keeping up with him. And there we go, that's a female wattled starling. And if we have a look, we'll try to find you a male. He's got that very distinct, or between his legs there's a male there. A little bit further to the right. There we go. And you can see that yellow and black wattles, and you can also see all the little flies that are flying around that ellie. So I can only see 2 elephants at the moment. It could be just on the peripheries of the breeding herd. There's the other one there. Colleen in Seattle is wondering how fast can an elephant run. Colleen, they can move incredibly quickly for an animal of that size. They can run probably at close on 50 or about 55 kilometers an hour. I'm not quite sure what that is in miles an hour. But as I said, these ellies aren't the most relaxed, so I'm going to leave them and I'm going to go see if we can find more of those leopard tracks. After tracking for so long, and the positive note of not finding his tracks crossing over the southern boundary, I've got a good feeling about we might possibly be able to find this male leopard, and that'll be really incredible because we've tracked them for so long this morning. like to know what is the proper name for an elephant when it's in heat, both the males and the females. So for a female, it is called estrus, and for a male, it is called must. And elephants will actually only mate when the male is in must and the female is in estrus. So while we continue to go in search of Tingana, let's go see what the very, very articulate James Henry is up to on Arethusa.
Right, so we've come on to Arethusa, and well, there's not a lot going on here. We found some impala. They all ran away, as impala generally do. And we're now heading down. We drove along a drainage line called the Marakeni, which is the main kind of dry riverbed that runs through Arethusa. And we're now making our way towards the Arethusa Dam. And they are following up some female leopard tracks around the area, but nothing has been found on Arethusa this morning. So, that is the state of affairs here. Sounds like we've had a wonderful elephant sighting with Brent Smith. We'll keep listening to the radio and try and find out what's going on around Arethusa now. Just in case some of you I know are new viewers and you're wondering what on earth I'm talking about with Arethusa, it can become an intimidating array of different names that you hear, from the Kruger National Park to the Sabi Sands to Arethusa to Djuma to all that sort of stuff. We traverse two small farms, and by farm I mean wildlife farm, and they're not farmed, they're wildlife areas, they're private areas, and they're totally unfenced, of course, but human property laws dictate that we can't cross certain boundaries, and we traverse Djuma, which is 900 hectares to the east of us, and now this little portion called Arethusa, which is 600 hectares. That's 1,500 hectares, about 4,000 acres. This is the total area we're allowed to traverse. The animals, of course, can come and go as they please. There is a fence down the far western boundary of the Kruger National Park, but we're nowhere near that at the moment. Big Cat Week, and since the advent of our YouTube stream, we've had more and more new viewers, which is just very wonderful indeed. To interact with you from all over the world is fantastic. And Lisa Stacy, you say this is your second time on Drive with us, and you're having a good time. I'm so glad that you are, and I hope that you will, first of all, continue to watch, and secondly, tell everybody you know, everybody you don't know, everyone you see in the street about us, so that they too may join us on Drive every morning and chat to us. Also, remember to tell us where you're from when you do talk to us, because it really is fascinating to hear where you are from. The way this tree has been modified through the attentions of various animals. Look at this funny thing here. Sorry, we're getting a comment through from yet another magnificent Twitter handle. I'm just going to get the name again. I ask for it to be spelled to me because I need to do it justice. This is a greenthorn. A new viewer called Bubba Redneck. And Bubba, you want to know where y'all are, I think is what's your question. Do we know where we are, or does anybody know where we are? I'm going to draw you a map, Bubba, and you have missed, I can't believe it, but yet again, my top Twitter handle has been surpassed. Bubba Rednecks, you're now my favorite Twitter handle. Thank you for that. find an open patch of sand, and I'm going to draw a map of where we all are at the moment in the world. It can be very confusing, I must say. And if you're sitting on, well, you're obviously sitting on the internet, and you've got Google Earth with you. If you go to Google Earth and you Google Djuma or Sabi Sands, you'll find it. It'll pop up on the map of Africa. But I will show you now. If I can find an open patch of sand, I'll draw you a map as to exactly where we are. Other rednecks. Wonderful. Here we go. Here's a bit of open sand here on the road. Flat Cap in Florida, you say you've heard I'm an accomplished musician. Well, that's very kind of you. And you want to know if I ever take my guitar out and sing to the animals. No, I don't do that. Certainly not publicly anyway. Right, I'm going to draw you a map over here. Bubba Rednecks, pay attention to the sand here, and hopefully this will help you understand, and perhaps the rest of you understand. I must just warn you, I'm a particularly poor artist. So here we go. Deb, you'll tell me if you can see. First thing you need when you're drawing in the sand is a stylus. Here it is. And what we're going to do is clear a palette over here, or a canvas. And I'm going to draw you 3 different drawings. The first one is going to be of Africa, the second of South Africa, which is the country we're in, and then the third is going to be the eastern section of South Africa known as the Kruger National Park, and then I'll show you where we are there. Right, here we go. Very quickly. A frame. Right, here goes Africa. Something like that, down that way, up like that, there's the Horn of Africa, round like that. It looks something like that. That is a particularly terrible drawing, but that's basically what Africa looks like. And South Africa is over here. There we go, that's not too bad. That's where South Africa fits on the map of Africa. And you've all probably heard of Cape Town, that's over there. You've all probably heard of Johannesburg, that's over there. And we are in this section here, the eastern section of South Africa, known as the Kruger National Park. Right, so that's your first map. So we're going to zoom in. So if you imagine us zooming in on that section, I'm only actually going to draw you 2 maps. This will now go into the Kruger National Park. Northeastern section, and it looks like this. It's like a large boot. Right? That's the Kruger National Park. Then we talk about the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park. That extends off like that and into Zimbabwe to the north. So there's a section in Zimbabwe, section in Mozambique, section in South Africa. We sit here on the western fringes of the Kruger Park in the Sabi Sands, and we are in a little piece here in the Sabi Sands, and that's called Djuma and Arathusa, and that's where we find ourselves now. This whole area that I've drawn here is 3.5 million hectares, or 8 million acres. This section of the Sabi Sands, 60,000 hectares, or if you multiply that by 2.2, we get roughly 180,000 acres. Our little section of it there, about 4,000 acres. Okay, so Bubba Rednecks, I hope that explains a little bit about where we are in the world and how it all works. Right, on we go. Let's try and find some animals. Bubba Rednecks, yes, that drawing was indeed for you, and if it has helped you make you feel a bit special, I'm very pleased. Thank you for getting hold of us and keep asking us questions. And you say you're in Florida. Wonderful stuff. Oops. That's that tree. So we often talk about pans, and this is quite an interesting thing here. If you look over here, this is a pan, and we talk about natural water holes or ponds. This would be one of them here. You can see that there's a lot of clay in the soil, and as soon as there's any kind of rain, this kind of clayey soil will hold water, and it'll provide, well, drinking and also wallowing spaces for the animals. Communications are now starting to break up at the final control. We're quite a long way from home. But a question from Canada, a name I didn't get, I'm afraid, too much static. Desiree in Canada. You want to know what the most colourful bird we get is here? Well, there are a number of different coloured birds. I suppose I would put three. No. The most colourful birds we get here are the bee-eaters. Carmine bee-eaters, beautiful red colours, and the European bee-eaters, gold and blue, and a little bit of green on them, some black and white, and then also the little bee-eaters, which are green and blue and yellow. I'll show you a picture of them now. Then I suppose the most brightly coloured, you could look at the woodland kingfisher, the bright halcyon blue colour. You can look at the brown-headed parrot. They've got a hugely beautiful shiny green back. And then of course the crested barbet is also a very nice colourful bird. He's covered in red and black and yellow and white. So when we get to the Arathusa Dam, I'll take the bird book out and I'll show you those colourful birds. Israel? Amount of action here on Arathusa. Difficult question to answer here from Mandy Olson on the subject of birds. What my favourite bird is. You're in Utah, Mandy. My favourite bird is probably the white-browed scrub robin, humble bird that it is. I just love the call that they make. And as I've said before, it's quite interesting. You know, we have an amazing array of birds, over 900 species in South Africa. And there was recently a poll done as to what South Africa's favourite bird is. And the humble Cape robin came up as South Africa's favourite bird. And I suspect largely because it has such a pretty song, very confiding, and it lives in cities. And I know when I used to live in Johannesburg, there was a Cape robin that lived outside my house. Or my house is a very strong word for what I lived in, but on my dwelling, if you like. And the Cape robin used to provide, in the mayhem of the city, it would sit in the garden outside, the little garden that there was there, and it would sing away. And it was a connection, a little touch that I had of the wilderness every day, with that little bird singing outside my window. And so when it came to voting for South Africa's favourite bird, I voted for the Cape robin, thinking that it would never come close to beating things like a magnificent martial eagle, the Battalier eagle, some of the other incredible birds that we have here. But the Cape Robin came out tops, and I suspect that's one of the reasons. Out here, my favorite bird, the little white-browed scrub robin. Nondescript, humble bird, beautiful song. It just reminds me of my connection with the wild. The dam is down here somewhere. Bubba Rednecks, you were on fire this morning. You want to know if there are any snakes or lizards around here. Bubba Rednecks, there are plenty of snakes here. Hundreds and hundreds. But remember that the snakes here will avoid us almost at all costs. They don't want to be around us at the moment. Or at any time, because they see us as a threat. We do see them from time to time, and if you pop onto the Safari Live Facebook page, you'll see an incredible sighting that Scott had of a mamba the other day. An amazing sighting, but it's so amazing, well, because the snake is amazing, but also because it's so unusual to be able to spend time with them and watch them on drive. They move away from us so much. They just want to be away from us as much as they can. So we do get lots of snakes. You would have heard of mambas, you would have heard of puff adders, you probably would have heard of, maybe have heard of boomslang, which are called tree snakes, very venomous snakes, lots of venomous snakes here. But would I say they were dangerous? No, I wouldn't. Because most of them, they can be potentially dangerous, but they will mostly try and get away from us. Lizards, the most impressive lizards we have here are the monitor lizards. Big things like that, sort of, I guess, like an iguana size, and we get two kinds here. One a water monitor, and the other is called a rock or tree monitor, and one obviously lives in the water, and the other is in a tree or in a rock. The feathers on birds and their colours, the different kinds of plumage birds have. In Genevieve in New York, you want to know the diet or the genetic makeup, or what is it? I think the diet or the digestive system affects the colour of a bird's droppings. I think it's almost entirely, well, it's probably both, but it's almost entirely what they eat that makes a difference to that. Right, we're approaching the dam now, and I will show you, Desiree, some of those very colourful birds that we get here in my bird book. See if there isn't any other action down here. It's starting to get hot already. It's only just after 7 o'clock in the morning, and already I'd say the temperature's gone from 19, which was, if I'm not mistaken, about 69 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's now gone up to, I'd say, at least 26 degrees Celsius, so approaching 80 Fahrenheit, and that's just 2 hours after the sun came up. There's some buffalo bulls here. From Brent Leo Smith. I mean, Brent Leo Smith is a challenge in himself, but he would like to try and find the most colourful bird that we have here in the Sabi Sands. But I think that's probably a little bit easier, which should be possible. But we'll let you guys decide. I will try and find colourful birds. He will no doubt do the same, and you can decide which was the most colourful. Right, there are impala, there are buffalo, there are herons, there are hippo. So we'll stop here and we'll have a look at these old boys that are standing in the sun looking, well, I don't know, they're looking like they're just contemplating life to themselves. And I will find some pictures of those incredible birds that we may be able to see a bit later. saying to each other. Apparently one is saying, "You're standing on my spot." The other very colourful birds we get here are the sunbirds. So that would be a good candidate for a little competition today. Amazing. It's not a serious fight, this, it's just a kind of bit of argy-bargy. There will be an established dominance hierarchy amongst the bulls. And they'll just be reaffirming that hierarchy now. Bubba Rednecks, you've just been usurped again by a new Twitter user called James Hendry's Fan. It's going to be very difficult for that Twitter user to be usurped now from the top of my list of Twitter users. Thank you. That's a very kind Twitter handle to have. You want to know how you become a safari guide? I have to tell you, it's not rocket science. Let's just watch these amazing chaps here. But the big thing, if you want to be a safari guide, is you need to like people. And I mean, there is a difference between what I do and the traditional safari guiding, and that is that the audience, obviously, or the number of guests I have on the back of the vehicle is substantially higher than it would be in a normal game drive situation. And I actually prefer this because it means that the interaction is that much more interesting with the people around the world. But to be a safari guide, you've just got to have a real love of the wilderness and a love of transferring that knowledge to other people. And yes, the knowledge comes with time. It's just a question of time spent studying and observing animals. And you can do that with a formal degree, you can do it from experience. There are a number of little qualifications you can do here in South Africa or various parts of Africa that will help you. But there's nothing stopping anybody doing it entirely on their own, just by using books and that sort of thing. So they've had enough of each other now. One's going to dribble quietly to himself. You just be able to see the little string of dribble there shining in the golden African sun. Question from Mike Eastwood in Richards Bay. Mike, you want to know why it is that the vehicles can't cross the boundaries. You want to know if there's some sort of agreement in place that doesn't allow it. Absolutely, it's precisely what happens. So all these areas we're on now are privately owned. Human beings, especially in the Western world, have a tremendous kind of attachment to their property, and the human property laws are very strict. And so, various landowners have got different agreements between them, and that's why some people can go somewhere and some people can't go other places. Yes, there's politics involved. There's financial implications as well, and there's also very valid ecological conditions or considerations. You just don't want too much activity on pieces of land, and so people are quite careful about who they allow onto their land and how many people they will and how many vehicles they're prepared to have driving around their land. This is wonderful to watch these old bulls doing this. So Mike, just in summary, I mean, we couldn't just have everybody driving everywhere because it would be a complete free-for-all. And so there are some fairly strict rules in place. Now, I have not heard any hippos going. And I just, oh no, there are some hippos here. We can't really see them, but I can see them now. So never mind, the hippos are still here. Right, let's have a quick look at these birds. And there are all the colourful birds. So Desiree, you wanted to know about the most colourful birds that we get here. I think you'll find that these bee-eaters are the most common ones. This, or most colourful, that one we get here, that's the little bee-eater. You can see blue and yellow and green and turquoise and a bit of gold and black and brown. Then the carmine is a spectacular one, and they'll come here probably around January time, and that's pinks and blues and reds and maroons. And then buffalo, getting very cross with each other. That's the other one here. That is the European bee-eater, or golden-backed, and you can see the very golden back with a bit of yellow there and turquoise and blue, wonderful colours. Of course, there's also the humble lilac-breasted roller, which is actually flying around us here now. It's not landing, of course. It's going wah, 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 wah. And that's beautiful. It's apparently got 7 different colours on it. I've never counted them myself, but that's purple and lilac and blue. Lots of colourful birds. Yes, these buffalo bulls. Leo Smith is getting himself into a lot of trouble here. He says showing you colourful birds in the book does not constitute finding colourful birds. I could say something rude, but I'm not going to at this stage. I'm just going to try and find a colourful bird for you. All right, let's move on from the buffalo. The hippo are hidden under a mass of water hyacinth. There are a couple of, just look down here, Tibbs, there are some geese. And the interesting thing about those geese, of course, is that they are all youngsters. So Cindy, I was just talking about the lilac-breasted roller that is flying around here going whack, 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 whack. And you say, do they have a nice voice? No, they have a very foul voice. They sing not unlike Brent Leo Smith, actually. And where the bee-eaters have got very pretty voices, as do the colourful sunbirds, so unfortunately, there's an actually very interesting little bird there. I'm going to ask Tibbs if you just go to the right-hand side. There, that's a junior African jacana. A juvenile African jacana. A lily trotter with his huge long toes. All right, Brent's got something to show us. Let's head across to him, and I'll keep on my quest for the most colourful bird of the Sabi Sands. See you a little bit later.
So, unlike James, I will show you a real bird, not a bird in a bird book. And we have a little pale morph Wahlberg's eagle, not the most brightly coloured, but a good stepping stone to a far more colourful bird. You can see that very distinct little crest, and it's blowing in the wind, and it turns its head. The back, there we go, look at that. So a lovely little pale morph Wahlberg's eagle. Sitting quietly scanning the bush for possible prey species. But it is not the colourful bird we seek, so we shall continue on. Bye-bye, little eagle. So Mandy asked James earlier what is his favourite bird, and Mandy would now like to know what is my favourite bird. Oh, Mandy, that is a very difficult question to answer, and I think from the book, my favourite bird. I've got a lot of favourites, but I think one of my most favourite birds is not something we get in this area, and it's quite rare in southern Africa, but not so much in other parts of Africa, and I'm going to find it for you shortly. Remember, it is in the book, and it is not a very brightly coloured bird at all. It's a very drab bird, but it has some of the most interesting behaviour. And it's a bird that generally inhabits forested areas. I will find it shortly. Might take me a while, I might have to find it a little bit later. But my favourite bird in this area, now that's a difficult one as well. I will find my favourite bird of, oh, there we go. I think I'm in the right zone now. Or not. I mean, the kingfishers are beautiful, but I don't know, for me, they don't quite do it. So the bird I'm looking for at the moment in my book is called an African broadbill, and it's a tiny little brown bird, a little LBJ. And let me stop being useless and actually use the key. It should be around. But it is tiny, it's about this big, and very brown and drab, but it has the most amazing mating display, and it lives in much thicker forested areas in South Africa, in sand forest and riverine forest, and it sits on a little branch, and to impress the ladies, the male flies full 360 circles around the branch while making this incredibly loud call, sort of, while he flies round and round and round. I will find a picture of him for you now, and that's probably my favourite bird. More from its behaviour than its beauty. So we're still scouring this area for Mr. Tingana. I know Scott is on foot behind me here. Last tracks went into this quite big block. So we've checked that they haven't come out, but we're going to go check again. Never know, sort of popped out while we've been talking about birds. Subject of birds, Clive from Atlanta, who's a new viewer, a very warm Safari Live welcome to you, Clive. Clive would like to know, does the Sabi Sands have Kori bustards? Kori bustards, the heaviest flying bird in the world, and we do. I haven't seen it in Djuma, but on the basalt plains or the Gabbro plains to the south and to the east of us, I know they do see them from time to time. So here we go. I found him. This is my favourite bird, an African broadbill, number 3. So not the most impressive in looks, but really, really wonderful display. And normally done in the early morning or late evening. Actually, I think I might even have possible recording of that. I'll have a look. Might have a recording with me. Wouldn't that be a treat? The call, but we can take a quick question from Ravi in New York. Welcome, Ravi. Ravi would like to know, do I believe the food eaten by birds has a correlation to their coloration? They eat. So if they are not eating that specific species of crustacean, the pink of the flamingo or the scarlet ibis will become very dull. But I'm not sure with birds like rollers and that. I don't think so. I think that's more from a display point of view. But with flamingos and ibis, I know what they eat does definitely have an effect on their color. Ready. I don't know if you guys can hear it. That's the African broadbill's call. Oh, it's coming. It sounds much louder in real life, I promise. And they do that while they go around the branch. And all to impress the ladies. But now, enough focusing on mythical birds that do not occur here. Let us go find a brightly colored one so we can stamp all over James's hopes and dreams. While we do that, let's go see what James has got, and it's definitely a lot larger than a bird.
Next time you see Brent, you need to tell him that, for us to remain as friends, which I often refer to him as, he can't be stamping all over my hopes and dreams. That's not what friends do. So someone needs to tell Brent that. This, of course, is a hippopotamus, and sitting in a little pan here on the Arathusa airstrip. And I'm wondering, I don't know if anybody is watching the Djuma Dam cam, if Peter is still in his pan there. This chap looks fairly similar, I think, except perhaps in slightly better condition, doesn't have quite the same sticky out spine. But I suspect you'll find a hippo of similar sort of age, a young bull, chased out of optimal habitat, and that's why he'll be sitting in this pan here. And he's definitely got lots of bite wounds on him. If you look just behind his ear there on the right-hand side of your picture, you can see that those are definite teeth marks, probably from an older bull who gave him a bit of a beating and sent him packing on his way. And he's going to have to spend a lot of time in this pan to stay cool today. Although there is quite a nice breeze coming up, I think it's going to be a fairly beastly hot day. Lots of birds around here, none of them very colourful, unfortunately. Just landed on the back there is a hammerkop. There you can see in the middle of your screen, just coming down the bank. That's not a hammerkop. Yes, it is. It's a hammerkop. Phew, well, I've gone mad for a second there. And then if you follow the tips, if you just pan to the right along the bank, some very interesting birds there. Actually, there's first thing you're going to come to is a three-banded plover, and then the next one is one that I haven't seen here before. That one there, pecking in and down and wagging its bottom, is known as a common sandpiper, and the easiest way to identify him is by that sort of flash of white that goes between his shoulder and his wing. sort of crescent-shaped bit of white there is the easiest way to identify that as a common sandpiper. Again, not very colourful. I'm just hoping that a bee-eater might arrive here to find something to eat or take a bit of mud. But no bee-eaters here. You can hear that wind starting to pump a bit now, which is quite nice. Okay, let's press on from the hippopotamus and make our way to the southern end. We're on the Arathusa airstrip here. We'll go down to the very south and then push our way north back towards Juba, hoping to find a little bee-eater. Or a lilac-breasted roller. We'll make do with one of those. Particularly valid question for the area we're now in. Alyssa, you want to know if this area of the Sabi Sands gets secretary birds. Actually, the only secretary birds I've seen in this particular part of the Sabi Sands have been on this very airstrip. So yes, we do find them here. They're not common. They're not common anywhere, but they are found around here sometimes. We're very lucky. The sun is really starting to burn down on us now, and I'm sure you can see just above the dashboard there, you can see how the sky has gone from that delicious color of this morning to kind of very burnt out pale blue. And that's fairly typical when there isn't any cloud in the sky and we're into the middle of summer, so the sky becomes this kind of burnt out blue color, especially when we haven't had rain for a while. Those buffalo having a little bit of a box a bit earlier, and Maggie, oh look at that little fellow. Look. Two little warthogs. Maggie, I'll get back to your question now. Now, of course, the warthogs remind us of Tara Dales. They were her favourite, who was recently departed from the directing chair. So we'll give that to Tara as a sort of early Christmas gift. I'm 90% sure she's not watching. 99% in fact. So the warthogs, very vulnerable to drought, and if there is a little pan of water like this one here, it's very common to find two young warthogs like this hanging around it. They love the mud, like all good pigs. These are two young boars, definitely not big enough yet to be mating, so they're just sort of biding their time, growing up together as a little sort of digs of bachelors. It's so nice that they're standing still. I find the warthogs here very seldom will stand still, or indeed lie down. You can hear the wind rustling now. Righty, those are the warthogs. Okay, colourful birds, where are you? Colourful flower there. There's a morning glory. Tebs, can you see the morning glory on the ground? Beautiful pink colour amongst the kind of grass that is disappearing in the wake of the heat. There we go. Lovely morning glory, which you find all around the world. I think you get different species of morning glory. W, who is in San Diego. Liz W won the inaugural Safari Bingo event during Big Cat Week, which means she's coming to Tanzania fairly soon to go on safari, and she wants to know what it is that makes a good safari guest. Liz W, first of all, just coming to Africa makes you a good safari guest, which is just wonderful to have you around here. There is an elephant. Hold that thought, Liz. I'm going to get into position for this elephant. It's trying to hide from me behind a bush. So Liz, while we approach this fellow here, he's going into the deep bush. I don't think he wants to see us. We'll just try and follow him for a little while. Liz, I think the best thing you can do to become a good safari guest is to ask a lot of questions. And just before you come out, I think it's more about what's going to make the experience most rewarding for you. And I think the way you do that is by learning as much as you can about the environment before you get there. Because what that means is that you've then got at least a base background from which to ask questions and from which to learn. Without that, I find that people often come to this area and they don't know anything, and that's okay, that's absolutely fine. But because they haven't done a huge amount of reading before they get here, they don't normally leave with a particularly in-depth understanding, because you've got to go through all the basic stuff. So if you could learn as much about the wildebeest migration in Tanzania before you get there, I think you'll find that your experience will be far more rewarding. So a good safari guest is somebody who has a good time. We're going to really struggle to get through here without creating a major injury. The elephant is wandering off through that thick bush there. I think we're actually going to leave it. We're quite close to the boundary here, so I don't think we're going to try and follow him through there. We're going to lose what little is left of Jigger's decorum to try and follow him through there. So Liz, I hope that answers your question. A good safari guest is somebody who comes and has a good time out here and asks lots of questions, and I think the main thing though is for you to get the most out of the experience, and for that I would do quite a lot of study before I came here. Very invisible stump there. Right, okay, let's head across to Brent before I break the car, and we'll head on back towards Juma and see you there.
So, we are in search of a brightly coloured bird. Of course, the lilac-breasted rollers that inhabit quarantine every day are now gone. And we must have driven past about 60 woodland kingfishers. They are now also gone. But we will keep endeavouring. I did have a brief view of a violet-backed starling, but it escaped. I think I might go back down to that area, see if we can find it. But we're trying to get a roller in the bank. And as to James saying I shouldn't trample his hopes and dreams, it's a way to lose friends. James is quite a cantankerous, angry little person, so he has very few friends to lose, so he can't really afford to lose me. So unfortunately, he's stuck with me. Ha ha ha. Not James Henry, like to know, are there any species of fox on Juma? There are not. There are a few fox species in Africa. The only one that occurs in southern Africa is called Cape fox, and it is endemic to the dry desert regions of the southwest and north of us. And very, very pretty little animal. And then there's a couple of other foxes that live in the North African deserts. Sand fox and a fennec are two of the other fox species. But there is a remnant population of Eurasian red fox, so the same fox you get in North America and in Europe, that occur in the Atlas Mountains of Morocco. interesting part of the world. There's also a remnant population of grey wolves that live in that section of North Africa, as well as the only place in Africa you will find red deer, and the only indigenous occurring deer species in Africa. So those obviously came across when the sea water levels were much lower, and there was a land bridge between Africa and the Middle East, and that's where those animals would have crossed. Also, the only place, or not the only place, but you also get species of sheep called the Barbary sheep that occur in that area. Although some sheep species do occur slightly further to the south in Ethiopia, there are some also sheep species there. But we're heading back to where Vildy and I glanced at violet-backed or plum-collared starling. Oh, and thank you for Final Control for reminding me, I forgot about another fox species that is also generally more confined to the drier, more arid areas, and it's a bat-eared fox. They do occur to the north of us, where you'll have a bit of a transition between the Kalahari soil type and the low-felt, so there are bat-eared fox and spring hares in that area along the Limpopo River. Now, where is a brightly coloured bird? There literally seems to be an absolute lack of birds at the moment. It's like they have voided the area. Continuing on the subject of birds, Cindy, who's in North Carolina, sorry Cindy, I'm scouring for this violet-backed starling, flew into this drainage a little bit earlier. Cindy would like to know, well, her favourite bird is a hummingbird, and she says they get lots in North Carolina during the summer. Wondering, do we have any species of hummingbird here? We do not. They only occur in North and South America, as far as I'm aware. We have, our closest is a sunbird, which is a very similarly shaped but generally a bit more robust, and that's saying something because the sunbird is a tiny little bird, but the hummingbirds are even more finely built. I'm not seeing this violet-backed starling. Shall check a little bit further. Very, very pretty bird. But it has escaped. Question from Jose, who's been very active this morning in Virginia. Jose would like to know if we've ever kept track of how many different countries or cities, states we get questions from during the drive. Jose, I definitely have not. I think that is definitely something the Final Control would keep track of if we did, so I'm not 100% sure. And I think someone out there is monitoring. Still in search of a brightly coloured bird. At the moment I'll take just the normal starling, but it is quite hot already, and there's a bit of a wind blowing which could have stopped a bit of the bird movement. We should have definitely started this competition in the early hours of the morning rather than the blistering heat of the late morning. The strong wind that's blowing, you can see the trees moving around, will also hamper the birding. all the wind that's blowing around. We've got a question from the Windy City, Chicago. Evan would like to know what made me become a safari guide and what would my advice be to someone who was thinking about it. Well, Evan, I didn't really have a choice. No, I'm joking. I was pretty much born into the industry. I've grown up in safari lodges my whole life. And for me, there's never really been a doubt about what I was going to do. Whatever it was going to be in the bush somewhere. And my advice would be a lot of people think it's the knowledge that makes a good safari guide. It's not. Knowledge is secondary. It's having a good personality and a good attitude. Often you work long hours and have to deal with difficult people. So quite often a lot of the top lodges will actually take a person based on their personality and then train them from scratch how they would like their guides to operate. So my advice would be to get hold of some of the top luxury lodges in Southern Africa and see if they've got a training program or apprenticeship program going. And generally they will take you on your personality as opposed to your knowledge. Knowledge is something you gain, but a good attitude is something some people lack. The brightly coloured birds, probably far away after me shouting at them. I think I've got a sneaky plan up my sleeve. Well, at least we've got the Warburg's eagle, not very brightly coloured, but a bird nonetheless. I think the real winner, the one that would take the cake, and they are around at the moment, they've just arrived last week from cavorting in Central and East Africa, is the little pygmy kingfishers. They're incredibly beautiful. Oh, warthog running. I know you saw some relaxed ones with James. That one is not. Is careering off into the bush. Well, aha. Well, we've got a bird, not the most colourful, and we've also got some buffalo bulls, but it is more colourful than a Warburg's eagle. A little red-billed hornbill. Oh, there it goes. And another bird. Just excuse us, buffalo, we're not interested in you. Oh no, it's flying away again. This is the problem with birds, they have wings. It makes them far harder to keep track of. Birds are torturing me at the moment. There's a starling in this leadwood, but it's not being a very... There we go. That's so close. Oh, Alright. That starling does not want to be filmed. I shall oblige it. So what I'm saying is I thought the biggest winner from the bird species that are around at the moment, apart from the obvious rollers and woodlands kingfisher, is another little intra-Africa migrant that's just arrived. And I actually saw one drinking in the pool yesterday. Is number 3, the pygmy kingfisher, an incredibly beautiful little bird. I think that would be the winner. But who's going to find it is another question altogether. Come on, Vim, take your leopard spotting skills and spot a shiny bird. As Vim says, in 9 minutes he's on leave. Of birds is up to me. Oh, Vim. very sadly saying goodbye to Veer. Shiny in the distance. Apparently there's bad signal here. I have to move through, maybe get it from the other side. Okay. Unfortunately, we were in a bad signal area. We might get a better view from here of the Birchall's starling. And again, not the brightest of the starlings.
It's in a bad spot.
It's in a bad spot. We can't get the camera there, but we did see it. He's on the top of the tree. So we're going for sheer massive birds now, hoping that one of them will be more colourful than James's. Well, one thing's for certain, failing a colourful bird, James does have a colourful personality. You can see there's quite a strong breeze into cover. I imagine what's happening on the other vehicle. The vehicle James is racing around, checking every bush. And I think he's the same, which are the most common colourful ones, the lilac-breasted rurlo and the woodlands kingfisher. Nearly the end of the sunrise safari, and competition for the most colourful bird is heating up, and I'm going to say goodbye unless I find a colourful bird, and then I will force the final control to crash cut away from James so I can take the glory. But a goodbye to Viam, who's off on leave for 2 weeks. He'll be back next year. I hope he has a wonderful time, but don't forget to join us on the Sunset Safari, where we'll be searching high and low for birds and beasts. So until later, or until 2 minutes when I find the right bird, goodbye.
So, my colourful personality, well, I'm not sure if it was genuine or not. I'm some way to forgiving Brent for the plethora of insults that he's delivered to me today. A red-billed hornbill, yeah, I guess that is the most colourful we've seen today. I find that distressing, that the most colourful bird we found you so far is a red-billed hornbill. I am driving very slowly here because we're near the nest of the lilac-breasted rollers that Scott saw. I'm hoping that the adults might be around. The fact that we also tried to pass off the Birchall starling as the most colourful bird is just embarrassing. You know what there is in here that I can hear is a white-bellied sunbird. You can hear it going tick, 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 tick. We're not going to see it though. It's too small and the sun is too bright. I can also hear an orange-breasted bushshrike. That would definitely qualify as the most colourful bird if we saw it. Tibbs. Woodland kingfisher would also do, given the parlous state of the competition this morning. I rejected the woodland kingfisher as a bird that was not going to be colourful enough. Top of this tree here, there. top of this tree here is the orange-breasted bushshrike. Just right bang it into the top there. Have you got him there? That's it. It's in there. Look there, everybody. There. Can't really see his colours. I'm trying to draw him out. Move, bird. At the top. That's not him, is it? No. That's a distinctly uncolourful bird. There's the orange-breasted bushshrike that flew in there. Move a little bit forward. Keep the camera on there, Tibbs. Can you see him there, Tibbs? I can't see him there. How distressing. That would have been very nice to see. Oh well, sorry about that, everybody. We'll just drive slowly through the dip here. Sometimes little bee eaters will lurk amongst the reeds. Nothing too obvious here. Clive in Atlanta, while we spend the last 1.5 minutes searching for something more colourful than a red-billed hornbill, frankly is a ridiculous winning bird. Clive, you want to know what motivates me what gets me going the most about doing this and motivates me every day? To me, it's the learning process. It's the learning process. I find out new things about the bush every single day by interacting with you chaps. And then also, it's the performance aspect. It's trying new things and seeing if they work with the audience, and hoping that trying different things and climbing different trees and maybe sitting on a termite mound here and there, drawing a map in the tee, and that's pretty good fun. I've heard some kind of waffling on the radio that says to me that Brent has also found something quite colourful, but I'm not sure.
See, you never give up, never ever give up, to quote Winston Churchill. And right here at the finish line we have not the lilac-breasted but a purple roller. Beautiful bird. It's a resident roller like the lilac-breasted. It doesn't travel like the European, and you can see him swaying in the wind, and you can see that the rollers are predators with that large hooked beak. Well, thank you, James, for playing. It's been wonderful. And look at that. Isn't that a beautiful bird? Lots of different colors, not quite as striking as the other roller species, but far more subtle. So from Commander Bond and myself, it's been great having you with us. Lots of fun, and we will see you again on the Sunset Safari. Have a wonderful rest of your day or night or morning or whatever it may be, wherever you are in this wide world of ours.